there my darlings, how's it going? My name is Craig, and today I'm going to be giving you a deck profile on my Fluffal deck. Fluffals are a deck that I've had a lot of love for ever since they first came out. I started playing them pretty much since they first came out in the OCG, and I've stuck with them ever since. So I'd like to call myself a little bit of a Fluffal pioneer, if you will. It's gotten a lot of crazy support since it first came out, and the build has changed quite a bit, but I think I've gotten to the point where I've had the same build for quite a few months now, so I'm pretty happy giving you guys a deck profile on it. So without further ado, here we go. So starting with monsters, of course we have 3 Fluffal Dog. Dog is the main searcher of the deck. Whenever it's normal or special summon from your hand, you get to search a Fluffal monster from deck to hand except himself, or you can search an Edgem Sabers. Then we have 2 Bear. You can send Bear from your hand to the graveyard in order to set Toy Vendor directly from your deck, and if you don't know what Toy Vendor is, it is the main spell card for Fluffals, so a really good effect. Bear also has another effect where if he's on the field, you can tribute him to add a polymerization from grave to hand. That's not an effect you're going to be using very often, but that first effect to set Toy Vendor is amazing. 2 Fluffal Owl. I see a lot of people running 1 Owl when they build Fluffals, and I will never understand that. This deck revolves around polymerization. Owl's effect is basically the same as Dog's, except it searches you a polymerization from deck. Owl also has a secondary effect. When he's face up on the field, you can pay 500 life points to fusion summon a Frightfur monster from your extra deck using materials in your hand or on the field. You can only use one of those effects per turn, and it's a hard once per turn, much like Dog, so you can't abuse Owl too much, but he's a great card for the deck. 2 Sheep. Now if you have Sheep in your hand and you have a Fluffal monster on the field except Sheep, you can special summon Sheep from your hand. That's an inherit summon that doesn't activate, so you can avoid giving your opponent a draw with Maxi and stuff like that. And when Fluffal Sheep is on the field, you can return one other Fluffal monster you control to the hand to special summon an Edgem monster from your hand or graveyard. Now what's really good about that is that returning the Fluffal monster is cost. So even if there's a skill drain on the field, if it's Fiendish Chain, Breakthrough, Veiled, whatever, you can still return a Fluffal monster from field to hand. What's great about that is it helps keep your Dog and Owl safe, and you can recycle your Dog and Owls, get them back to your hand, and bring them back out, and, you know, loop stuff like that. Then we have 2 Wings. Wings is a card that this deck really needed. It gives it a lot of draw power and helps it keep up resources, which with fusion summoning, as most of you will know, takes up a lot of resources. You need to keep your draws going, keep recycling stuff. If you don't know the effect of Wings, if it's in your graveyard and you control a face-up Toy Vendor, you can banish Wings from your graveyard, target 1 Fluffal monster in your graveyard, and then banish that to draw 1 card. Then you can send a face-up Toy Vendor you control to the graveyard to draw 1 additional card. And as many of you know, Toy Vendor has an effect if it's sent to the graveyard. You can search a Fluffal monster or Edgem Sabers from deck to hand. Next we have 2 Cat. When Cat is used for a fusion summon, you can target 1 polymerization in the graveyard and add it back to hand. So a really good effect, and like I said, this deck revolves around polys, so keeping those polys flowing is absolutely crucial to make fusion summons happen more. Then we have 1 Rabbit. Rabbit's essentially the same thing as Cat, but it adds 1 Fluffal monster or Edgem Sabers from grave back to hand. That's it for Fluffal monsters. Moving on to Edgems, we have 3 Edgem Chain. Edgem Chain, when it's sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can search 1 Frightfur card from your deck to your hand, which is really good. Plussing and keeping even with fusion summons is one of the key aspects to making this deck really good. I run 3 for consistency's sake because you can't really search Chain except with fusion conscription, and that limits you quite a lot. We'll get to that when we get to the spells. Then we have 2 Edgem Sabers. It allows you to go into one of the most powerful fusion monsters in the deck, which is Frightfur Tiger. And for the last 2 monsters, I have 2 King of the Swamp, which is an amazing card. If it's in your hand, you can discard it to add 1 polymerization from deck to hand, and King of the Swamp can be substituted for any 1 fusion material, but the other fusion materials have to be correct. What's great is that this works from grave as well, and as most of you know, Fluffals have Frightfur Fusion, which is a miracle fusion for the deck. So that's it for the monsters. Let's move on to spells. So of course we're running 3 Toy Vendor. This is the main spell for Fluffals. Now, Toy Vendor, once per turn, you can discard 1 card and then draw 1 card. If the card you draw is a Fluffal monster, you can special summon any 1 monster from your hand. If it isn't a Fluffal monster, you have to discard the card that you draw. That's a really good effect alone. It can help you summon Owl and Dog in the same turn, which is really powerful in the deck. But the number one thing, in my opinion, as of right now, is that it does enable Wings plays, which gets you pluses and searches like crazy. Then we have 3 Polymerization. Ignore the fact that I'm using Bandai polys, I just think it looks cool, but these are not tournament legal, so these don't go buy these, take tournament, not good, bad. Like I said, the deck revolves around polymerization, so having 3 in my opinion is mandatory. A lot of people will argue against me, which is okay, they're allowed to be wrong. Then we have 2 Frightfur Fusions. Frightful Fusion, like I mentioned earlier, is a miracle fusion for the deck, and if you don't know what that means, it basically means you can fusion summon a Frightful from the extra deck, banishing the fusion materials from your field or graveyard, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing. One of the best cards in the deck. Now, I only run 2 because it is searchable with Chain, and you can only use 1 of them per turn. But if it wasn't limited like that, I would definitely run 3, but an amazing card. Then we have 1 Frightful Factory. Frightful Factory is basically a continuous spell card, and it's pretty much a once per turn polymerization by banishing a fusion spell card or polymerization spell card from your graveyard. For example, any card that has fusion in the title, so like Frightful Fusion, that would count. Polymerization would count, anything like that. Now, what's really cool about Factory is that if it leaves the field, you can target one of your banished Frightful Fusions and add it to hand. So optimally, you want to be banishing one of these guys for this guy's effect. That way, if your opponent ever gets rid of this, you can get one of these back. It really puts a lot of pressure on your opponent because they want to get rid of this so you can't get easy fusion summons. But at the same time, if they do, it'll get you one of these back, and that's an easy fusion summon. So it really does put a lot of pressure on your opponent. And we have 1 Instant Fusion, which I'll get to the practical uses of that later. 1 Fusion Recovery, a really good card. 2 Fusion Conscription. Fusion Conscription allows you to reveal 1 fusion monster from your extra deck, then add 1 of the listed fusion materials from deck to hand. However, you cannot normal summon, special summon, set, or activate the effects of that monster for the rest of this turn. So it really does limit you in that regard, but it is an amazing card for getting sabers and chains and even Fluffal Bear to hand, but we'll cover that once we get to the extra deck. Then I have 2 Book of Eclipse, which is amazing for dodging stuff and taking care of problem monsters that you usually couldn't get over. 3 Twin Twisters, which I don't think I'm ever going to take down to less than that. Even if you're going up against a deck that doesn't run a lot of back row, I still think 3 Twin Twister is necessary. There are only 7 cards in the main deck that aren't useful in the graveyard, so you have a lot of targets to ditch for Twin Twister. Of course, Chain, Wings, Sabers, Toy Vendor, all of these are really good targets, but there's a lot of other cards which you don't mind having in the graveyard. Just being able to get rid of back row so you have the safety to go absolutely crazy with fusion summons is mandatory in my opinion. And the last card of the deck is Raigeki. I don't run any trap cards in the deck because I just like having a really fast fusion deck, and having all these spells is really nice. It keeps the deck flowing, it keeps it fast. So that's it for the main deck. Let's move on to the extra deck. 1 Frightful Chimera, just in case. It's not a very good card, but if it does get to late game or you just get in a really weird situation where it can be useful, it's definitely a card that can put in work, but I wouldn't recommend any more than 1 of it. It has a pretty long effect, so I'm not going to run over it now, but the key aspects of it is it's similar to Go-Yo Guardian with its effect. It's an Armades, and it's a 2800 beater. 3 Sabre-Tooth, a really amazing card for the deck. Really easy to go into. Sabre-Tooth is amazing because it lets you make plays when you shouldn't be able to make plays. Sabre-Tooth requires 1 Frightful Fusion monster, plus 1 or more Fluffal and or Agent monsters, so it's super generic. If you use 3 or more materials to make Sabre-Tooth, it becomes immune to destruction by battle or card effect, so it becomes a Bills, which is amazing. And when Sabre-Tooth is fusion summoned, you can target 1 Frightful Fusion monster in your graveyard and special summon it back. So it's a really good card. It also has a passive effect where it boosts the attack of all Frightful Fusion monsters by 400 attack, and that includes himself. 3 Sheep. Sheep is a 2k Armades. It's really easy to make. It requires Agent Chain plus any Fluffal monster. Sheep has a hard once per turn effect where if it's destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effect, you can and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it back from the graveyard, and then it gains 800 attack. 2 Frightful Tiger. A really good card. When Frightful Tiger is fusion summoned, you can target cards on the field up to the number of fusion materials used and destroy them, which is amazing. One of the main combos in the deck is basically blowing up your opponent's entire field and back row or whatever they have with Tiger by using a bunch of materials. It requires Agent Sabers plus 1 or more Fluffal monsters. And then if your opponent tries to respond with anything, you can immediately use Book of Eclipse and flip this face down. It then becomes completely immune to Veilers, Skill Drains, Fiendish Chains, anything like that that would try and stop its effect. And then it resolves and just blows up a bunch of stuff, which is amazing. And what's really nice about Book of Eclipse in the deck, by the way, is that you can fuse with face downs. So flipping your guys face down isn't a big deal because you can immediately just use them for fusion materials anyway. 1 Wolf. Wolf is a pretty simple effect. I'm pretty sure you know what this does. And 1 Frightful Bear. This is a card that you will almost never go into, but the main reason you have him in the deck is to reveal him for Fusion Conscription, so you can add Fluffal Bear from deck to hand, so you can set up a Wings play next turn. That's it for Fusion monsters, and finally we only have 4 more monsters, which are Xyz monsters. 1 Sky Cavalry. One thing that this deck can't deal with very well, or at least this build, is anything that can't be destroyed by battle or card effect, or can't be targeted or destroyed by battle, or anything like that. So something like a Bill's King of the Diabolic Dragons is really hard to get over unless you have something like a Sky Calv, or a Book of Eclipse to flip it face down and blow it up, or something like that. That's why he's in there. It's a great out to cards like that, which you'd otherwise struggle with. 1 Constellar Ptolemy M7. A similar reason to the Sky Calv, it's great for bouncing stuff that's a proper monster. 1 Photon Strike Bouncer, which I don't use very often, but I've been running it since my very first build of the deck, and it's never let me down. And finally, 1 Divine Dragon Knight Felgrand. This card is really easy to go into. The great thing with sabre-toooth is that you don't have to use that many materials. You can actually save resources and not use a bunch to make it immune to destruction, and then in main phase 2, if your opponent's still alive, you can overlay into Felgrand so you have something to do on your opponent's turn. A really, really good card for the deck, and I absolutely love the work it puts in. So that's it for the deck profile. If you have any questions about this profile, or if you guys want to let me know anything you would change about this, or anything that you've changed yourself, please leave a comment or video response. I'd love to hear from you guys, and I love discussing things with you. But that was my Fluffal deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care and duel on. KMC sleeves are amazing!